Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to decode a totally wild psychological phenomenon that explains why so many incredibly capable people fail right at the brink of their ultimate success. Seriously, think about it. You put in the hours, you do the work, you can literally see the finish line, and then bam, suddenly everything falls apart. It's like marathon runners hitting the wall just a couple of miles from the end, or an entrepreneur who grinds for 2 whole years on a new app, only to start picking completely unnecessary fights with their co-founders the week before launch. Maybe you've even experienced this yourself, like getting this crazy, inexplicable bout of writer's block on the final chapter of a project you were just sailing through. Well, today we're looking at exactly why that happens. We'll examine the deep biological reasons your own mind might actually be working against you, and most importantly, how to finally break the cycle.
96%. Now, this isn't just some random statistic. It actually represents the exact point where the journey to becoming a millionaire or really achieving any monumental goal usually falls apart. It's that moment when the heavy lifting is mostly done and the end is clearly in sight. Now, you'd think this is when things get easier, right? But paradoxically, 96% is actually the most dangerous phase of your entire journey. It's like this specific altitude where the air gets super thin, where motivation completely wanes, and where people inevitably make these catastrophic, unforced errors. It's literally like snatching defeat right from the jaws of absolute victory.
You'll fall asleep at 96% and wonder why you died broke. Wow, that statement perfectly captures the core threat we're examining today. And honestly, understanding the psychology behind it is absolutely crucial, because it tells us that falling short usually isn't about the market, or your competitors, or just plain bad luck. No, it happens because the human mind interprets the finish line as the end of a familiar struggle. We actually get comfortable in the grinding phase. Reaching the actual goal means entering the unknown, a new identity, new responsibilities, maybe even a new tax bracket. And the fear of that post-success unknown triggers a literal biological shutdown. Your mind quite literally lulls you into this false sense of security, effectively putting you to sleep right before you cross the threshold. Crazy, right?
All right, let's jump right into Part 1, the 96% trap, and the symptom of failing at the finish line.
So the chronological journey of this trap shows us exactly where the subconscious sabotage strikes to ensure you never actually cross that finish line. Think about step 1. You start your goal and push toward the end. That's all adrenaline, hard work, and momentum. It feels fantastic. But then comes the slowdown. Just as you get really close, your subconscious actively hits the brakes. And this doesn't look like a dramatic breakdown, actually. It's far more insidious. It looks like sudden, unexplained procrastination, or deciding you need to completely redesign your website logo instead of making your final sales calls. It manifests as finding meaningless busy work, or creating imaginary roadblocks, or convincing yourself that you deserve a break because you've come so far. And the subtle deceleration leads inevitably to that final stage, where you fall asleep at 96%. You lose your edge, your focus totally dissipates, and the momentum you desperately need to push through that final 4% just completely evaporates.
Which brings us to Part 2. Pena's subconscious limit theory, and diagnosing this programmed killer.
Now, Dan Pena's theory reveals a truly fascinating truth here. It isn't a lack of capability that stops us, but rather our own subconscious artificially capping our limits. To understand why he refers to this as a programmed killer, you have to realize that your brain is biologically wired for safety and homeostasis. It absolutely loves the predictable. Massive success and high performance? Well, those represent a radical departure from your current reality. So, to your survival-obsessed brain, the unknown is always interpreted as a threat. As you approach that finish line and prepare to step into a completely new life, your subconscious deploys a defense mechanism. It actively works to kill the progress just to keep you safe in the environment it already understands. It initiates this really subtle shutdown sequence to protect you from the perceived danger of succeeding.
So how do we actually defeat a biological system designed to keep us playing small? Well, if the subconscious is a programmed killer that triggers near the finish line and forces you into that devastating sleep, the antidote requires an immediate and aggressive reset of expectations. You have to anticipate the fatigue. You have to know that when you hit that 96% mark, your brain is absolutely going to lie to you. It's going to tell you that the work is basically done, or that the final details don't really matter. Resetting your expectations means actively recognizing this biological brake pedal the very moment you feel it, and consciously forcing your foot down hard on the gas instead. What does that actually feel like? Well, it feels like working with way more urgency on day 99 than you did on day 1. If you don't actively execute this reset, your natural behaviors will absolutely guarantee that you stall out just inches from the finish line. Okay, moving right along to Part 3, Accident versus Intention, the mechanism of goal achievement.
People often fail because they try to just stumble over their goals by accident, basically relying on fleeting bursts of energy, rather than achieving them through deliberate, forceful intention. It's a bit of a dry but totally undeniable observation that most people expect success to eventually just bump into them if they hang around long enough. But listen, you cannot accidentally become a millionaire. You can't just casually drift past the 96% mark, running purely on the fumes of sheer enthusiasm. Motivation is an emotion, and like all emotions, it fades. By the time you reach that final stretch, motivation is long gone. The person who succeeds doesn't rely on feeling inspired. No, they rely on ruthless, structured intention. They build systems that force them to complete the work whether they want to or not. Your subconscious is always going to try and pull you back to the safety of mediocrity if you're just stumbling along. Overriding that programmed killer, that requires absolute, unyielding intention.
Let's look at part 4, a brutal work-life choice and the reality of financial success.
Escaping the trap means completely reframing wealth and success as a deliberate work-life choice that carries some undeniably brutal consequences. The source material doesn't sugarcoat this reality, and honestly, neither should we. We often hear the word brutal tossed around as a trendy buzzword, but in practice, choosing to push through that final 4% is incredibly taxing. It means losing weekends while your peers are out relaxing. It means potentially alienating friends who are perfectly comfortable being average just because your new trajectory makes them uncomfortable. It means pushing through immense, literal mental fatigue when your body is begging you to stop. The stark reality of financial success is that it requires sacrifices in your lifestyle and your immediate comfort that most people are simply unwilling to make. It's a harsh and demanding choice, for sure, but acknowledging that reality up front and making that choice consciously is literally the only way to shock your system out of falling asleep at the wheel.
Knowing that your own mind is essentially a programmed killer waiting for you right at the finish line, well, that changes everything, doesn't it? The 96% trap is out there, actively waiting to pull you back into your comfort zone the very second you let your guard down. So I'll leave you with this explainer's final question. Will you choose brutal intention, or will you fall asleep and wonder why you died broke?